I don't think I was supposed to have the fairy tale career, because without my experiences and the relatability, would I really have the tools and the ability and the perspective to help people and connect with people the way I do?
What's happening, legends? Welcome back to the Becoming Reborn podcast. Today, this is one of the, I'm always excited, but I think this is the most excited I've ever been to do a podcast, because I've listened to this guy on multiple podcasts before. He's got an incredible story. He lived about 15, maybe 16 lives, and that's just in the last 3 years. And I'm excited to hear about each and every single one of them. The person is Sandor Earl. He's played about a million different he's played for about a million different teams. And today we're going to go through his journey through rugby league, but then also life after rugby league, which is even more incredible. Sandor, how are you, bro?
How are you, bro? I thought you were going to say he's played a million games. I was like, oh, don't say that.
Million different teams.
Million clubs, yeah.
But what was it? It was Roosters, Penrith, Raiders, and Melbourne.
Yeah, very typical of my life. Just a gypsy journeyman.
I love it. But what a journey, though.
Yeah, it was. Good stories.
We were just discussing your mother. I actually know your mum. I met her. I can't remember how she got my number, but I was actually going to do a presentation for, I think it was South at the time. She was working with NRL clubs, and I was going to come in and do my story for South about drugs, alcohol, and gambling, as your mum is in that space. But COVID hit and never got to do it. But she recently has helped me out with a friend of mine, and mate, I tell you what, between the two of you, you guys could write 17 books of the lives you had. And that's where we're going to start. I'm going to start with your upbringing, bro. Run us through, what was your life like growing up?
Looking back, growing up, obviously had the opportunity to reflect and podcasts and stuff. It's you can see in reflection how it's defined the person that I am. So I grew up in Woolloomooloo. Very different to how it is now. It's pretty posh and nice area. But back in the day, grew up in Housing Commission in Woolloomooloo, around sort of King's Cross area. Growing up, just a love of sports. Mum was my first footy coach when I was 3 or 4 years old. So
she told me that.
Yeah, she's a diehard footy fan. She was that lady who was just screaming nonstop. But a very individual, independent life. The one reflection that I always talk about, and you'd know King's Cross from back in the day.
Yep.
At the age, how old are your kids?
10, 7, and 2.
Perfect. So your 7-year-old, what's your 7-year-old?
Ace.
Ace. All right. So Ace is 7.
Yeah.
He's in year 1.
Yeah.
And he's going to walk from Woolloomooloo to King's Cross Station, catch a train, and then a bus to school, and do the same home at 7 years old. That's what I did.
That's incredible.
So different worlds, different times, but I look back and I just reflect on that story to be like, fuck, that was different. But that's kind of been the journey of independence and figuring it out and having that other perspective and experience of life, of just being a little bit of street smart and having an awareness. So that was kind of growing up, but just a love of all sports, bouncing around, and then moved out to Leichhardt Inner West, and then ended up, by the time I started high school, I was shipped off to boarding school.
Was that a punishment or by choice?
I think it was both. It was both. I think it was supposed to set me on the right path, but it was also good footy school, so I got an opportunity out there.
Were you a naughty kid?
Yeah, naughty in the sense that, by any standards, I never did anything that was like, oh my God, so shocking. But the framework of school and
it
was just very disruptive. I loved sports and things like that are part of school, but I was just always in trouble for minor things.
Mischievous.
Yeah.
My mum used to say the
same
thing. And easily distracted, right?
Yeah, even when I went to Waverley College in year 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And wouldn't let me graduate. I was not expelled, but
really?
So bounced around a few schools.
When you found something that you were passionate about when you were a kid, I know what the answer is now, but when you were a kid, when you found something you were passionate about, could you really focus though?
Yeah, 100%. And that's still the current theme. The way I learn or the way I'm educated is a little bit different. But if I'm passionate about something, I just absorb and soak everything in. I'm so dialed in.
You go right in with everything, right? So growing up, sport's a massive part of your life, right? Through your high school, is that where you started making the rep teams for rugby league?
So again, getting on to 12, 13, I remember my typical day, mum never drove. So I don't know my dad, but mum never drove. So public transport everywhere. And you can imagine playing all sports all over Sydney. Even at that age of 12, I started to get into boxing, and I was kind of mixing around boxing and rugby league. I'd be up at 5 o'clock, go to school, train footy, then come back, do boxing in Glebe at
You're way
Johnny
too
Lewis's
pretty for
gym.
boxing, bro. Way too pretty.
And by 8:30 p.m., I'd walk up the hill. Mum would come down, meet me, and like grab my backpack off my back.
Beauty.
I'd go in, like fall asleep having dinner, and then start again. So like that was my life at 12, and not knowing. I think it just built this. I didn't make it because of skill or talent. Actually, I told Muff a story the other day when I was talking about, there was a time where I was about 16, and you would have experienced this back in the day. I was at the Roosters, and there's kids from New Zealand, like kids from Queensland, kids getting paid big money. I initially didn't get by on talent. Like didn't have any talent, but I kind of identified at an early age how significant it was to be perceived as like a hard worker or a great teammate. I picked up on that very early, and that's definitely going to come up in this conversation. Like I just built this self-awareness, and maybe it was because of my childhood, but I was able to identify, like, if I am the hardest trainer, if I am the hardest worker, if I am the first there, like, I know at the end of the day I've got to play good footy, but I identified how significant that was, even from the perception of like a coach or being picked. And I really think that's what got me by at an early age, up until like 17 or 18.
So you're making these squads, but you were never like the best. Is that what you're saying?
No way.
Wow. So I know Roosters was your favorite team growing up.
Yeah.
And you got to represent them early.
Yeah.
I'm guessing made his cup SG ball.
Yeah, Matthew's come up in like the development squad and system and stuff like that. And there's only the other day, Mum showed me a photo of, like, when we used to play at halftime and that.
Yeah.
Games, yeah.
Actually, I think you put the photo
up.
of that.
I put that photo up. Yeah, I was like 4 years old at the Sydney Footy Stadium, and it's pretty cool. Like, at 18, then debuting, and Freddie Fittler was the coach. He was my favorite player. Like, you take that stuff for granted, but looking back, like that's
so cool.
That's crazy. Imagine telling at 4 years old that that's going to happen. It's fucking mad.
What was the journey like from Matty's cap to making your first grade debut?
So the biggest thing that happened, when I was 17, I was playing a game out at St. Greg's, footy game, and I tore my ACL at 17. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was, at the time, it's, you're quite unaware. Like, you don't realise the significance of it. Like, I tore my ACL again later on in life, and I was like, fuck.
Same leg?
Nah, different leg.
Perfect.
Yeah. So at 17, made my way home, train and bus again, limped home, and Mum was like, all right, well, we need to go see someone. And then went and seen the surgeon, got told I tore my ACL. Again, you don't really know what an ACL tear is at that age. And God bless her, like, we didn't have money, but somehow she begged her way through, got me to the best surgeon. His name was Merv Cross at the time. Like, I'm talking the best in Australia for ACLs. I think she ended up getting him to do like a payment plan and on Medicare, which is, unheard of. So I got the best surgery. And then I remember the college I was at, quite a serious school. They sent me my homework of 3 months in like this post pack. And I just get, Mum, I'm not fucking doing that. Like, I'm not going back to school. So she go, all right, you can have the year off, but you got to get a job. And so, again, another defining moment. I remember after my surgery, probably 4 weeks in, I was on my crutches. There was a gym up the hill. I'd never really been to the gym before, like dabbled in it at Harold Matts and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're still weak as piss. I was like 69 kilos.
Yeah,
skinny. And then went to the gym. She got me a nutritionist. I started just eating 5-6 meals a day, just like force feeding. And then the next year, bro, I came back at 83 kilos.
He's a big boy.
Yeah. And it was just like completely changed. And I remember at that, I was talking about this the other day with a physio that I'm working with. So that was at the start of the year. And the way the Roosters used to work, I don't know if you remember, they used to have these open trials. I think Sharks did it fairly often.
Yep.
So there was an open trial at Henson Park.
Yep.
At the end of September.
Yep.
And I was like, at the time, I was like, this is the be all and end all. Of course, as we know, it doesn't mean shit.
Yep.
But I was like, I need to make this trial. So I came back at that age in 6.5 months from my ACL. And I did 6.5 months, yeah.
That's
that was
incredible.
The second, yeah, crazy. Even like, it's incredible for anyone, any professional athlete, let alone that age. But I did the work. And I went to this trial because I wanted to get into the SPG ball side. And luckily, first run off the scrum, scored like a 70-metre try. And then his son played on the wing for the Sharks. Oh, Brian Gray.
Yep.
He pulled me off. He goes, all right, mate, you're sweet. You're done. So I just literally had one run. And I was off, and he said, "All right, you'll be in the squad." And I was like, "Oh, thank God!"
Beauty.
So then it went on from there. And the worst thing that could have happened at the time ended up being the best thing, because there's just no way I would have gone on that journey of training, nutrition.
Yeah.
And mate, you come back at 85 kilos at that age, I was a different player.
Different player, right?
Different player. So
because it's like, yeah, physically you've got the size, but mentally you just feel
power, strong, so different. So
the best feeling.
Yeah, and then the journey started, and then went through the system again. Gratefully, the Roosters were not doing well at all, and in the Toyota Cup, right, every player was debuting, so it was a great time to be in the mix. And then, got my shot about 3/4 of the way into the year. Debuted in first grade.
How old were you?
I was turning 19. Yeah.
And you play with your childhood hero, Brad Fittler. How was it like? Explain the first time you ever met Fittler, like as being like he was the GOAT.
Yeah. There was like an aura. I think it was too early for him to be a coach. I think the transition, he was still friends with half the squad. Like he'd had a relationship with them. Like those guys, Fitzy, all those guys were still playing. So I just think it was too soon. It was too soon. But later on, he's done well, obviously. But it was just too soon. And his demeanor, he is quite a lad. So, I don't think it was the right time for him to be a coach. But for me, I was just like,
Fittler.
Yeah, and for him to come down and have that conversation, it was a real pinch me moment. As the debut is always that kind of cliche, like, that's my favourite memory and moment. I debuted against old Fergie, actually.
Fergie.
Yeah, and when he was playing with the Sharks.
Oh, how good. So you play against Sharks. It was at what do they call it now? The Allianz.
Allianz, yeah.
It was at the Allianz.
Yeah.
How'd you go?
Yeah, we went well. We won the game.
Perfect.
So it was good. And I played like pretty decent. It's a good game.
How once you debuted, were you in the squad? Sorry, were you in the team throughout, or were you in and out like most players are?
So I played like 3 or 4 games on a run. I think Kenny Dow was injured.
Skizzy.
So I played a few games, and then unfortunately, so the night of my debut, we went out to a nightclub in the city. I forget where it was.
Remember you told me this story?
Yeah, I forget the name of it. You'd know it, but anyway, we're downstairs, and I was with Jake Friend, Mitchell Pearce, and that, and then they were getting a little bit loose, and we were sitting in this like horseshoe table. They were throwing ice.
Dragonfly.
Yeah, it might have been actually,
because that sounds downstairs booth. Yeah.
They were throwing ice at these guys. I think he was an ex-footy player as well. And they got up and they started kicking off a little bit. And of course, I'm on the edge. So I stood up. I was like, bro, there's like 5 of us. It's 2 of you. And then he threw a punch. And then I've thrown a punch. And he's gone back and he took his missus with him. So then it all ends up. I think this is just when the camera phones are coming out too. So it all ends up. We go outside. And security runs over and it's like, oh, someone's hit a girl, blah, blah, blah. And then it just all kicked off. So that was night after my debut. Next day on the front page of the paper, I was like, fuck, here we go. So it wasn't ideal.
No.
Any publicity is good publicity is not true from what I've experienced.
You've had some publicity too.
Yeah. So that was the start. And then it ended up getting all squashed and cleared and everything, but I think they kind of just didn't put me in the best place in terms of like recruitment and stuff like that. Obviously, I thought surely I'll get another contract. Like I'm 19, I just played first grade, but I got let go. And
then that would have been a tough time, right?
Yeah.
And you're at the highest of high. This is rugby league, right? And the more I do these podcasts, that's all it is. And it's the highest of highs, and then like 2 weeks later, boom, like all vice versa. So that you don't get a contract, where to?
Nowhere. I was trying.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was trying so hard, my man, trying to get a contract anywhere. I ended up, I don't know if you remember Reece Robinson.
Yep.
He was a gun, and I only found this out later on in life when I played with him at Canberra, but there was, I was going to go to Canberra at that time, and they ended up signing Reece instead of me.
Dogs.
So I was just left in the lurch, and basically pre-season started, and so I just started training by myself.
This is 2010, eh?
Yeah, this is 2010, yeah. And I'd go to the park, go to the gym, just train by myself non-stop. And I asked Freddie if he could help me, like have a chat to a few people.
Yeah.
Called me back about a month later, and he goes, I've got a meeting with you with Matty Elliott out at Penrith.
Yep.
So it was pretty random. I was living in Manly at the time, and I remember going out there, like driving out there when you haven't been there to Penrith. It was like you're going to another state.
It's a long way away.
Yeah, and going out west. And then I remember sitting in his office just like this. He's got his big whiteboard. Again, another like very defining moment. And he had, the magnets with the names on them. There was about 11 outside backs. And he just said like, mate, I'll give you a shot in our reserve grade team. And this is who's in front of you. So you play better than them and you'll get a crack here. So, and again, like that was similar moment to what I was saying before when I was younger. I was like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Back
gonna
yourself.
do it. And there's not that anyone said I was, not that anyone gave me any belief, but I was like, let's go. And then I remember going out to my first session at Windsor Wolves on a cow paddock. It wasn't even a football field.
Heavy
I was
track.
just like, fuck, well, okay, this is very different to living in Manly, playing with the Roosters. I was like, all right. And then
And 20 Toyota Cup was filmed and everything back then too.
yeah. But now I was in reserve grade because I was out of Toyota Cup, and then started the season, played a couple games, ripped it, and then the recruitment officer came and said, "We got a contract for you at Penrith," and then started training with the top squad. 25K back in the day, but
You take it
still good.
It's more just chasing the dream, right?
Yeah.
And so how'd you run at Penrith go? Like, were you straight in the squad, straight into the team, or did it take you a few games?
Yeah, again, another opportunity. That year was mad. We went to the grand final in reserve grade. I think had a real good run, and about round 16, Mickey Gordon got picked for Origin.
Yep.
So that opened the door.
What position did
He was on the wing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that opened the door, and I started playing well, and then just stayed in the team, and we went all the way to the semi-finals.
Far out.
Yeah.
So you started the year, no club, train on your own. Then you end up at semi-finals with Penrith.
Mm.
Wow.
And I mean, we've spoken about this. I'm at the ripe old age of 35. I'm just convinced that that's the only path to get to success. It's a hard concept to kind of grasp, but that roller coaster, the only way that I've achieved or learned anything has been through going through the shit. And I think if you believe and accept that it's inevitable, there's also a freedom in that, knowing that you can go into any situation and there's a chance that you'll fuck up, there's a chance that you'll make a mistake, there's a chance that you'll fail. But how many times do you need to experience that before? Now you've got this belief system where if I get through this, so now at this point, I'm definitely not chasing adversity and shit situations, but it's just how it has to be. And I know that because my greatest moments, my greatest lessons have come after that. And it's just accepting that, I think, is fucking very important.
It's unbelievable that you just said that, right? So I had Scotty Sorensen on here yesterday, and we finished up on the podcast, and he asked me after, he was asking me about my next business venture. He's like, "Oh, does it scare you?" And I explained it not as well as that. You articulated that very well, and I don't look as good as you while I did it. But it was, my answer was like, I don't get scared now because I've been through everything. Like I know there's things going to come up. I know that it's going to happen, but I've been through everything now that I know we can get through it. Like we've gone through 2 COVIDs as a gym. Like it's as hard as it gets. There's going to be other things that come up, but you know that at the end of the day, hard work gets you through it. And you just got to be willing to get up each day and keep throwing punches. And if you can keep doing that, you end up becoming successful.
And I mean, even with your story, beautiful story of you told me of opening this gym, arguably it's probably not going to be as bad as that.
No, that's pretty bad.
And armed with the lessons that you have now and the experience, like there's a lot of things and a lot of mistakes that you just won't make.
Yeah.
Because like how you won't, because you know.
Because you learn from them.
Yeah.
You don't learn from your success.
No.
You learn from your failures.
You don't. And I don't know what it is, whether it's maturity or experience or exposure. We could have had this conversation 500 times when we were 20, 23, 25, and it just wouldn't have fucking landed. It just wouldn't, you know?
I don't know what you were like, right, bro, but no matter what you told me, whether it was right, wrong, otherwise, I wouldn't listen. I had to learn myself.
I'd listen, but like, I got the whole world ahead of me. Like I'm invincible at that age.
Yeah, 10 foot tall, bulletproof.
You get people in and they try and tell you like all these things. The first time that happens is at school. They're like, don't take this for granted. School's great. The moment school's over, you got responsibilities. You got to get a job. You're like, yeah, whatever. But it's true. And then it's the same with football. Like, don't take this for granted. You know, how good's playing footy for a living? And you're like, yeah, cool. Or like, learn how to spend your money properly, get into some business, find a passion. You're like, bro, I'm a footy player.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't hit, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't land until it does. So I don't know if anyone at a younger age, if somehow you can tap in to the lessons and the things that are going on around you. I think there was also a lack of mentoring. Like this conversation didn't exist.
No, podcasts weren't a thing, but
no.
like, especially men weren't speaking about they weren't making themselves vulnerable ever.
No,
You
and
know?
the culture in footy, like I'm happy to say, I don't talk down about rugby league or my experience, but you know there is a toxic culture there, and it is very like manly, and you know you've all of those things, the
Play
emotions,
hard, run
and the
hard, tackle
vulnerability.
hard.
That's non-existent.
Yeah, it's that mentality, right? Everything is like
It is old school.
Yeah,
It still is.
yeah, I agree. So you get through that season. Do you get a contract straight away again?
So get to the end of the year, crack a year, like everything's going well. And then what started happening was my shoulders were like subluxing a lot, not dislocating, but
just
got to the point where I could barely palm or tackle. So my plan was, I was like, all right, I'm going to work hard to like try and negotiate this contract. I went to the club doctor, and this is very strange, but very fitting of my story with Penrith and doctors. But I went to the club doctor, got my scans, and he's like, you need 2 shoulder reconstructions. You got a 10 and a 13 centimeter labrum tear.
One's enough. Why 2?
And I was like, and now actually thinking back, I've never even thought about this, and I've told this story 100 times, because I was like, oh, could you just not tell anyone? I'm just going to keep playing. Of course he fucking would have told someone, and that's obviously why I didn't get a contract. Just thinking about that now.
Yeah.
But that was my plan. And then I'm like, all right, I'll start the season, I'll play 3 or 4 games, and then I'll get my surgeries. But I've already signed a contract. But anyway, it was back and forth. I didn't end up signing the contract. Played the first couple of games, and I was just like, it was just getting worse and worse. So I just had to cop it, get the surgeries, uncontracted, 2 shoulder reconstructions, 6 weeks apart. And first of all, after not doing weights for like 5 months, it's amazing what happens to your body. I look like a snake, 12-year-old. And I was pretty big. Obviously, I got into the gym early, and so that was a big shift. And then like new coach, Ivan Cleary, Gus looked after me and gave me another contract. But I was just in and out of first grade and kind of, you know, going through that slump where I'm out of favor. I'm unmotivated. I'm not clashing with the coach, but it's not the best experience.
Yeah.
And
is this Ivan?
Yeah, this is Ivan.
I'm just reading his book now.
Yeah, I think he would have been very different back then.
It sounds it.
Yeah.
He in his words.
Yeah.
I'm only like maybe 3-4.
I'd love to see how he operates and communicates, because, like, jokingly, and he wouldn't give a shit because we've had some funny run-ins, but you know, I used to call him Ivan Milat because he was just like poker face. You just got nothing from him. He could never communicate.
No emotion.
But obviously, whatever he has done, learnt, experienced, he's clearly got to be a phenomenal coach.
It sounds like in the book, right? You know, he goes Penrith, he gets sacked by Penrith.
Yeah.
Goes to Warriors.
Yeah.
Goes to Tigers, and then comes back to Penrith. It sounds like what happens when that full circle moment is like he goes to Warriors, learns some things there, learns his lessons from those boys, goes to Tigers, more or less learns from what the club not to do there, and then goes, all right, I think he has a year off in between, and he writes down, and he reads a book by Alex Ferguson, and he's like, all right, I like what he's doing here with the Manchester United team, and he goes, that's what I want my team to look like.
There you go.
And it talks about what does a good, great team look like, feel like, act like, and then I'm just going through that now, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this is exactly what a business should be run like, but he's had to learn, like what we're talking about now, he's had to learn what not to do from all of his mistakes along the way, and then come full circle back to Penrith, and then
makes sense.
He's absolutely nailed it. Like he's like, timing wise, he had that group of boys coming through that were just kind of plotting away, and he was building over here, and then he come back as their
well, that makes complete sense. You know, I think at that start of his journey, he hadn't had that experience or gained those lessons yet. So, I got this call out of the blue randomly from David Shillington,
Canberra.
Yeah, and he said, mate, what are you doing? Fernsy's keen to talk to you. And of course, I was like, fuck, I'll take any opportunity at the moment. I just need, what I needed was I needed a new opportunity. I'm big on, a lot of people perceive change as loss, but I relish change.
Yeah, you
and at the
thrive
right
in it.
time, you just need it. But people, it's foreign territory. It's, you know, it can be confronting. But for me, I was like, this is what I need. And I remember the conversation with Fernsey, and you know, it reminded me of what I'll tell you with Bellamy, but it was just like I just needed someone to back me, to have a little bit of faith in me, and fuck, then I was going to bring out the beast. And he just said, mate, I believe in you, believe in what you can do. I think you'd be a great asset here. And before you knew it, I went up and seen Gus, and then by 3 days later, I was in Canberra, staying in a motel, and then rocked up on the Wednesday, and he said, oh, mate, we're going to play you this week on Saturday. And at the time, Canberra was coming like 13th, 14th, and then that's where, connected with Fergie, and we just went on this run. We scored like 30 tries in 15 games, and it was the best time of my life.
I had BJ Lillua in here this morning, right?
Yeah.
And I said, he asked me what I was doing today. I said, I got Sandor coming on. He goes, before I went to Canberra, he goes, all everyone talked about down there was Sandor and Fergie Ferg. You guys went on a heater, bro. It was
so, and I know you'll understand this. I've only ever experienced it at that time. Like footy there's a lot of pressure. It was fun, but playing wasn't always fun.
Yeah.
When we were running out on the, I've never experienced. I don't know what you would call like, and I'm sure you understand, like when people explain like flow state.
I knew you were gonna say that,
bro. And it was just like, I would run onto the field like laughing, like I was a child again. It was crazy, and it wouldn't matter what happened. I just felt we were invincible, and of course, we'd let in 4 tries, but then we'd score 6.
Yeah.
But like there was lots of problems, but I just remember actually playing in the NRL and having fun like I was a kid again. And that experience, regardless of what's happened, I'll remember for the rest of my life.
And by the sounds of things, BJ was saying that you always had a lot of fun off the field too when you were down there.
Yeah. And it's like at that age, I always had a line or never really lost control. I feel like, I was trying to help Fergie as much as I could.
Fergie.
Yeah, such a, I love Blake. He's had a very hard upbringing. And, I think, again, he's never really had the opportunity or got the support to just go deep and unravel all that stuff. And
Agreed.
It's unfortunate, but such a great man, such a fucking freak of a player.
An athlete.
Yeah, ridiculous athlete.
We used to have this basketball ring in my old gym, my first gym, and he came in, he was about 17, 18. And you remember how skinny he was? He came in and he's like, it was at the proper height, the basketball ring. Yep. And he goes, do you reckon I can slam dunk it? And it was hard to because it was hard up against the wall. So like it was a bit awkward. He literally picked the ball up, bounced it 2 or 3 times, boom, slam dunked.
Freak.
He's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
So good.
You know what my thing about Fergo, he's like his little kid still.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like he does some really bad things, but it's just because like, it's like he still hasn't quite matured yet. I love him though.
Yeah.
Were you down there with Bronx as well?
No.
Well, you're lucky then.
I wasn't. Yeah.
Bronx is very naughty.
Yeah, and Canberra was one of those things like, in some ways you could say it's similar to Melbourne. Like it's one place, you're kind of out of the hustle and bustle, but just the culture wasn't there. It was a very young team.
Toddy Carney?
Nah, he wasn't there either.
He'd have been shipped up.
Dukes was there, Jackie Whiten, Croker, Milford, all these guys. But yeah, it was a young team, but it was mad where everyone was very close, had a great experience. Again, we had some good times with footy there.
Yeah.
And then, the second year was a fucking shit show for me because I think I told you the story where I remember pre-season coming off that great year, had a mad pre-season, and then I'm sitting at home. Me, Fergo, and Jackie Whiten lived together, and I see on the news come up like darkest day in Australian sport. I was like, what the fuck's this? And then I seen Stephen Dank pop up. I'm like, fuck off. Like, obviously I knew him. I didn't know what was going on or any of the troubles because the Stephen Dank story happened in 2011 with the shoulder recur. So 2 years had gone by, but then I was like, fucking surely not. And then, of course, like this started this shitstorm whole year of media, which started out very like, I was like, no, I can't, surely I'm not involved in this. Like, this can't be me.
Because how long before that was it? Did you say 2 years before?
2 years. So, yeah, and then obviously rang my manager, and they're really the only 2 people that I could talk to about. So, of everything of my life I've been through, and even the public scrutiny and when it happened, that was a piece of piss. Going through, my personality, rocking up to footy every day, pretending like first phase, it's not me, I wasn't involved, so kind of living a lie.
Yeah.
Then it starts to come out and it is me, but I still have to be Sandor every day, like, up energy.
Mask comes on.
Yeah, fun, and still trying to play good football. And like that 7 months was so hard. And it's a big reason why at the end of the day, looking back, I would attack it so differently. Like, bro, you lawyer up and you just tell him to fuck off, to be honest. But considering the situation, looking back, yeah, that was so hard, bro. That was like brutal 7 months. And I would never wish that upon anyone.
Can you run us through what happened there? Because I know you've come out and you talked about, because the story that I remember hearing was like they basically said, all right, here's what you got to take. You take it, and then you go, and that's your doctor, that's your guy, and then you've gone to take it, and then it comes out that it ends up being whatever the
So I mean, it's funny. I do often think about, like, not jokingly, but I often think about just talking about peptides openly in public now, because it's a very normalized thing.
Heaps. I'm hearing it down in my gym, like there's people talking about it all the time about their injuries and stuff like that. Like
it's normal.
It's quite normal.
Yeah, it is. And at the time, so as much as he was a lunatic, like they weren't banned substances. Like that's just facts.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the stories with the likes of the Cronullas and the Manleys.
Yeah.
And he come in, he was employed at the club. And then when I got injured, I got introduced to him by our coaches. And peptides, by definition, and how you hear everyone talk about them, are amino acids.
Yeah.
And for me, amino acids was not something to be scared about. Now, of course, did I have any hesitation or any fears? Yeah, I did. So what did I do about it? I tried to stack up as much credibility in the time as possible. So I went to a doctor. Now, this is the one thing which I remember bringing up, saying, don't you think it's a bit naive? So this is my perspective, and you understand it or you don't. But in the club setting, it's very like straight.
Yeah.
Right. So going to the club doctor and saying this, who will say is maybe a bit of a stiff, like I was like, all right, well, I don't know how that's going to go down. So I was like, we went to a off-site doctor, but that doctor was at a clinic. I went in the public with everyone else, a normal clinic, and the club paid for it. So like, okay, there's my first little bit of stacking credibility, right? And then, okay, next one, I was like, all right, I'm going to just chuck this in the ASADA website. Didn't come up, not banned. All right, sweet. Next thing, get tested. I'm like, all right, well, if there was ever any doubt that something's wrong, here we go. Nothing happened. 10 tests later, nothing happened. So I'm like, all right. And it went on for 4 weeks, and it's like, it's over. So that was it for me. And how it came about was through text messages, because he had like affiliations with bikies and all this bullshit. And there was a text for him and Trent Robinson's brother, who was kind of in that space. And it was like, working with a young football player, Sandor Earl from the Penrith Panthers, shoulder injury, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it all came about.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And the 4-year part was the trafficking part, where I went to Stephen Dank's clinic, took it to the doctor, and that was trafficking.
That's what you got. That's trafficking. Because we had Tommy Carr on here. So Tommy Carr is Pat's younger brother, and he was playing for the Dogs reserve grade team. And he got done from a pre-workout, but that pre-workout, everything, it wasn't on the ASADA, but there was an ingredient in there it was a tampered sample or whatever it was, and he got done. And like when you meet Tommy, he's like the most like just genuine good person, wouldn't like do anything bad.
Yeah.
And he got done, and he ended up doing 2 years. Yeah,
Crazy.
Out of the game. That cost him, like he never played first grade because of it. He was on the cusp of it as well. Did the right thing, and same as you, like admitted, all right, this is what happened, went through everything, and then you hear about blokes that kind of like looks like a little couple white lies, and they end up getting out of it. You go and do all the right things. So I remember you even jumped on the footy show and
that was massive, because like I didn't say anything, didn't have a voice, and when the only perception is from the media, it's wild, bro. Like I was. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, like Sandor Earl drug cheat, all this stuff. I was like, fuck. So, of course, what's people's perception going to be? Of course, they have no other source of information. So, when I got that opportunity, not only did it cover a lot of costs for me, which was important, but it humanized everything. And everyone's like, oh,
I get it.
Okay.
The big one for me is like Penrith paid for it.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a I don't know if I've spoken about this. There was a court case, a legal case, which the lawyer who was helping me was like, I will, the words lost me, but he was going to do it basically on
pro bono.
Yes.
I'm a freak.
Yes.
Well
So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then that was like, but then, bro, when it was all said and done, and he would have been filthy because would have been fairly deep into the whole scenario. I just said, mate, I'm not interested. Like, I'm just going to move on with my life. I'm fucking whatever. I'm over it. So then I went to Thailand and I was like, I just got to move on. And, you know, similar to, I'm sure you've shared your story many times on the podcast and with many people, but I know from the conversations you've had, like as hard as that was, you couldn't take that back because who you are now is because of that. And okay, what would have happened? I would have played 4 more years of football and who gives a shit? Instead, I was forced to learn and grow, become a man, travel the world, start business. And like, I can't, there's no way I would take that back even if you gave me the opportunity.
Well, let's get into life number, I think we're up to 4 now of yours, because I heard this on a podcast and this would have been like 5 years ago. And this is how impactful that podcast was that I listened. I'm pretty sure it was with Ice, but I've listened to a couple from you, but I remember I was listening to it on a run. I still remember exactly where I was on this run. I've been through a fair few runs, and you were telling your story. This is when you just got back from Thailand, and you were telling your story of you just, you know, this moment that we're talking about now, and then you go to Thailand and you start up like a couple of businesses. Mate, how? Like, run me through how that starts.
So I kind of had this entrepreneurial flair. I was always interested in business. Every while I was playing footy, I was already scoping out things and opportunities. Not that it's that easy or you have that much knowledge and understanding, but it was on my mind. And went over to Thailand, quite a popular place, especially back in the day. Like everyone from Sydney was going there. Anyway, I lived there for a couple months, and I had this idea for kind of like a health food cafe.
Yeah, it's like a juice bar, right?
Yeah. I was staying at the hotel and this space opened up out the front, and I got on with this lad who was over there. And I basically said, this is the idea I've got. And this space was vacant. The hotel owners that I was staying at owned it. And I was like, let's fucking do it. So I probably had, from all of everything I've ever done my whole career, I had probably 10 grand to my name. And then I used that. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper to start a business and a cafe and whatnot. So went in with him, put all my money into it, opened this cafe. It was called Muscle Bar back in the day.
Yeah, good.
And I got stuck in. I was making smoothies for like 10, 11 hours a day. First experience of business, which was heavily driven and is still my greatest asset, which is customer service.
Yeah, you're very good.
And we just ended up killing it. And it was pumping and it gave me so much purpose. I interacted with everyone. It was such a cool experience. So that was my first taste. And then that ended up being, I was a part of another big gym there called Unit 27, then opened the gym across the road, Primal Fitness. Packed that up, sold it, traveled the world, came back, opened another cafe. And then that was my kind of experience around business and just breaking into things.
So did you open another one up in Thailand?
Yeah.
And then you come back to Australia?
Yeah.
It's like 3 different lives in that little period there.
It was a crazy experience. Like that time alone, that 3 years in Thailand, like living on the island, so many people come and go there, which was like, I got to experience, I met people from all different walks of life. And that was me fresh out of the footy bubble where the only people I know are football players or people revolved around football. And also my identity was heavily fixed on what I'd always been for the last 10 years, which was Sandor Earl, the football player.
And respectfully, the conversations you're having with the football players in that bubble as well, it's all exact same.
Exactly. So this was my moment to break out of that and had the realization. I was like, I am just me, and that needed to happen, you know. And no one gave a shit about rugby league. You realize how insignificant the sport is, not here but anywhere else. You realize how insignificant you are, even though you don't think that.
Humbling.
Yeah. So that was an amazing experience.
And like you said before we even got into this part of your life, all those adversities that you had gave you the opportunity to learn all these things, because you wouldn't have done this if you had to play the 4 years of footy like you said.
No way. My life would be completely different.
Yeah.
It's that butterfly effect.
And you come back and you still got, I think you still have like another year or a year and a half to go on your suspension. You start up in F45 in Melbourne, is that correct?
Yeah, I got a year to go, and F45 was starting to. It was already quite big, but I wanted to jump on board the movement, and ideally I would have just gone back to Sydney, my bread and butter, and it would have been great to open a gym in Sydney. But I kind of had my mind fixed on every football player knows, and kind of, well, definitely now would wish, like, I'd love to experience a Melbourne Storm, like what's going on there. And even now it's public knowledge that how many players go there who completely like no one knows them.
Yeah.
And they turn their whole career around. So I was like, if I got one more chance to do this, I want to and see how good I can be. I just want to experience that. So that was my whole mind was fixed on that.
You're just visualizing it.
Yeah, literally. And the story I was saying about the passport, I ended up getting deported from Thailand, real random, because I overstayed my visa slightly.
Yeah.
But really what happened was, and again, looking back, I would have done things differently. I sold my cafe and my gym, but then I opened another cafe because of this really opportunistic, this opportunity. So I opened another cafe. Now, ideally, I shouldn't have opened a cafe after I'd sold a cafe in the same area.
Yeah.
So they were filthy. They were cashed up, and basically there was a little bit of bribery. And the beautiful thing about Thailand is you can get away with a lot of shit, but when you're on the other end of it, it sucks. So dodgily kind of had a 1 day overstay, and you really shouldn't get in trouble for that. But yeah, I got arrested. I spent like a couple of days in a Thai jail. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And it was just that whole thing. That's a movie in itself, that whole time. And then yeah, we're in this Thai jail, and then got let out for a couple weeks, and then got deported. So, and when I say this is how funny it is. Police escort on the plane, then taken to Bangkok. Like you've only seen this in a movie.
Yeah.
Then taken to Bangkok, and I went to the detention center. That was rough, but I was only there for 2 days, which was good. But I had two things. One, I had a Valium so I could go to sleep.
Beauty.
And two, I had Craig Bellamy's book.
Whoa.
Which I slept on, but also read. And then that kind of just reinforced the idea that I had.
To Melbourne.
Now, at the time, I only had a New Zealand passport, which is what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Because Mum just got me a New Zealand passport. She's a Kiwi. So booked my ticket at the detention center, got to the airport, and they're like, oh, hey, you got to go to your home country. I'm like, I'm not from New Zealand. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I've lived there my whole life. They're like, nah, sorry, mate, you got to. So I flew back to Auckland, walked out of the airport, walked back in, bought a ticket, and then flew back to Sydney. So finally, after like 36 hours.
There's another life just in that.
So I get back. It gets way better. I get back to Sydney, and I'm like, all right. Well, my partner was still there. All my shit was still there. I hadn't sold this cafe yet. So I was like, I need to go back. I need to go back somehow. So I went and got my Australian passport. It took about 2 weeks. So, I was eligible, all the rest of it, but I had to get it. So it took about 2 weeks. And then I knew a guy there, again, now I'm back on the other side, the advantageous side of like, corruption's a strong word, but that side of life. And he said, I can get you over. I can get you back in. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to do it. So I go into the airport, Aussie passport, no problem, get there. I land on the plane, and 2 immigration officers come on the plane. So when you land and you're just sitting there, 2 immigration come on the plane, and they're looking, and then they make eye contact with me, and they go like this.
Oh, perfect.
And I was like, holy shit. They walked me off the plane, escorted me to immigration, stamped my passport, and then walked me out the fire door. I swear to God.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then so I went and got in the truck with this Thai copper. And then he said, mate, you don't have to worry. I'll come and check on you every now and again. And I just lived my life as normal. And then about 3 weeks in, I got this call, and he was like, mate, you need to go to immigration and get your passport stamped. And I didn't really think much of it. I was like, yeah, sweet, all good. But I went back to the same immigration place where all these guys got me the first time.
Yeah.
To go in, get it stamped, and I walk out. He's the biggest Thai guy I've ever seen. He's about 6'3". He was the guy who was just after me the whole time. Anyway, I walk out and just boom, we make eye contact. I was like, fuck off. And he just yells. Everyone looks at me. So I just went, fuck it. I just legged it, ran to my scooter, got on the scooter, and just took off, didn't look back. I went straight to the guy's house. He put me back in the truck, all blacked out. And he's like, all right, I'll make a call. So I went to Patong. I don't know if you've ever been to Thailand.
No. Oh, for rehab, but yeah, not this area.
Yeah.
different trip.
Yeah, different island.
Yeah.
Went to Patong, went and seen the chief of police. And he's like, mate, how did you get in? How? And he was mind blown. I'm like, mate, look, I just come in on my passport. Like, obviously I didn't tell the story.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, you got 3 options. You want to be here a week, a month, or 3 months? I said, mate, I just need a week. Like, that's it. Just give me a week. You go, all right, go down to the office, get your thing stamped. No one is going to bother you. So I was like, all right. When you got a stamp, no one said a word. No one come near me. No one come tried to talk to me. Then wrapped it all up, packed all my shit, left. Me and my partner went to the airport. No one looked at me. No one said a word. And boom, I was off.
Oh my God, I'm sweating. Holy
It was
smokes.
a crazy story.
So you come back to Sydney.
Come back to Sydney and then moved to Melbourne. And I was like, I want to open this F45. And I found a space there in about 2 weeks. Very unique. You know,
Yeah.
the journey to find a space is usually the hard part. And then, started that journey, opened the F45 about 6 months later, completely unaware, went through everything, opened it up. And for that 7 months, I coached every session. We had about 6 sessions, had about 300 people in the gym. It was right in the middle of the city. So that was awesome. But trained twice a day, coached every day. That was the lead up to getting back to the Storm. And then, you know, the age old story where I said to my manager, like, right, I don't want you to say anything. So I wrote a letter to Craig and I just said, like, one day I need to dig that letter up. It'd be cracker content.
Yeah.
But just said, this is who I am. This is what happened, warts and all. And this is what I think I can bring to the club. And then 2 days later, completely unexpected, I got a call. And he said, mate, I'd love to catch up at the cafe. And I think, did we speak about this?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
So now the conversation I'm talking about is we spoke about how there was a guy who did a podcast, and Craig, you don't get many stories out of Craig, especially publicly, but he told a story about how he takes young players to the cafe to see how they interact with the waiter and waitress.
Yeah.
So to hear that now is fucking cool. But at the time I didn't know, but luckily that's just how I roll, especially in those settings. Like,
yeah,
I don't know how you would explain it, but like, with a waitress or waiter or anyone,
you're phenomenal.
Over, you know. So I'm like always very respectful, and I actually really appreciate people who are passionate about their job.
Yeah.
And there's always that one waiter or waitress or barista, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I love that energy. Good. So we sat down. I think he just also wanted to suss me out, see how I look, see if I was keen. And
you look fantastic. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I just know.
I was fucking fit as a fiddle then.
Yeah.
And he just goes, mate, I've spoken to the powers that be. This is within half an hour. And I just didn't even think I was going to catch up with him. And he said, mate, I've got a contract for you next year. And I was just like, wow. And this is that moment again where I was like, fuck. Felt like someone to do that and have faith in me. Then, I went and ripped in, trained my ass off, and that's how the Storm journey started.
If only it was as smooth as just we're back in the game. I know how it goes, but I remember it was a huge story you making it back, and like I honestly didn't know you at all. I listened to the podcast, and I was so proud of your journey. 4 years out of the game, lived a whole nother life in Thailand, still came back. Strong as ever, fit as ever, and I remember seeing you doing a lot of your own speed work and stuff like that. It's so hard. Like, people that don't understand how hard it is to train on your own, especially when you come from a team environment, to then go out and do those things that you were doing on your own. Going back into the team environment, how good was it?
It was a bit, and like you said, it seems insignificant, but if you know, you know. I was coaching 6 sessions a day.
The energy that takes,
right?
Man.
And training at 10:30 a.m. and training at 2:33 p.m. running or gym every day for 6 months. Like that, again, I'm like, there's way harder things to do. And I've experienced, with the Melbourne Storm, I've landscaped for 2 weeks. I'll do the 6 months again over that.
Because we had Benny Robertson here the other day, and I asked him, did you have to do the 2 weeks of landscape, 2 weeks of labouring? Yeah. And he goes, I just got out of it because I started after their preseason, so he had to come straight in. Lucky Benny.
Yeah.
So you come back in, you train with the boys. Now, we touched on it the other week when you were in here. What stood out to me was when you rocked up there, within moments of being there, you understood why they were successful. What were the key things that showed you why they were so successful?
So there's a couple parts. Obviously, we'll get to the point where I tear my ACL, and that I think that will always haunt me. I just can't believe it, because the way I trained, the way I rocked up, I've been fit, I've been playing good footy, but I've never been like that. And that first 2 weeks of training, you can ask anyone. No need to be humble for this next 10 seconds. I was fucking taking the piss at training, like it was unbelievable. I've never felt like that, and obviously I tore my ACL, which is just cruel, but. I look back in 2 parts. I think it was a sign. Football was not my journey, a bigger journey. Like I was
Put on yourself for something else.
My life journey is also, I don't think it's supposed to be about me. It's how I can impact other people. And I understand that now, but I had to go through it. But also wouldn't take it back, because what I experienced of one of arguably the best sporting cultures in the world, that has set me up for the rest of my life. Now, if we reflect on that back to my time at Canberra or anyone else, I think the one example I first gave to you, you remember back being at school, and if you asked a question or you tried too hard, you're the teacher's pet. You almost get bullied for that.
Yeah.
That was the NRL. That's what it was like. So, if I was at Canberra or whatever, and